Morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us for FP&A with blind spots. And today we're going to discuss how we transform planning and AI and real-time insights. This is the format that we're going to cover. We're going to give you a brief introduction real quick. Then we're going to dive right into the challenge in terms of how you navigate the uncertainty. Then we're going to give you some real proof points in terms of data-driven insights and blind spots. More importantly, we're going to give you an overview of board signals and foresights and in terms of technology. And you're actually going to see the platform in action with Rich. He's going to walk you through some of that so you can have some key takeaways. More importantly, we're also going to give you some customer success stories and how our current customers are leveraging board foresights and signals in real world examples. And then we're going to give you some actionable recommendations and follow that up with any Q&A and next steps. So with no further ado, I'll begin with the introduction. Hi, I'm Matt Miners. I'm a senior account executive at Quisitive over here. We are a board partner and a Microsoft partner. And my colleague, Rich Wagner, is the field CTO for Board Foresights and Signals. Rich, you want to say hi?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. Glad to be here. Happy to talk about our topic today.
And so with that said, here's what you're going to gain today out of today's conversation between Rich and myself and the Q&A session. You're going to have real-world examples of AI-driven planning. We're also going to dive into an overview of the board's technology and impact. And then more importantly, we're going to provide steps to improve your forecasting and decision-making process with real-world examples. Then on top of that, we're going to level set and we're going to give you some ideas on how you can build the business use cases within your own organizations and figure out what next steps may be in terms of kickstarting your FP&A transformation based upon everything that you see here today. So with no further ado, what challenges are we seeing today in today's market, Rich?
Yeah, well, I think everybody is familiar with the volatility that we've had since really the beginning of the year, maybe the election, around things like tariffs. But there's others. There's geopolitical issues that we're seeing, all over the world. There's supply chain disruption. There's certain things like beef and commodities like that we're having some short supply on that's making the market very volatile. So we're having a lot of companies across industries, retail, CPG, manufacturing, logistics, etc., experiencing volatility that's happening faster and deeper than ever before. And I think in planning, not just FP&A, whether it's supply chain, marketing, sales, or finance, this volatility is making your job more difficult than ever before.
And are there particular percentages and things of that nature that you're seeing in terms of data that your team manages in terms of, in real world examples that you can give us?
Yeah, I'll give you an idea of the scope of the problem, right? And this is from many studies, but essentially what they say is about 80% of companies will miss their forecast at least one quarter over the past, let's say, 2 years, 8 quarters. So 1 out of 8 is pretty big. But when that miss happens, it's usually extremely unexpected. And what happens then, let's say in just retail alone, with things like excess inventory or maybe out of stock, it's about a $600 billion problem. And once a company misses, there's a huge impact on the value of that company, the perceived value and the actual value, because you'll see stock market prices fluctuate dramatically, sometimes billions, if not trillions of dollars, depends on the size of the company. The other thing we know when we talk to executives, almost all of them, over 9 out of 10, say they don't have enough real-time data. And what they mean by that is not only this data that's inside their company that sometimes is siloed and hard to get, but they're also talking about market data on things that are happening externally that are going to impact them. In research by people like McKinsey, they say overall it's about a 4 to 10% hit on your margins, something that when tariffs are high, when consumers are pulling back because of price pressure, you need to protect. So you don't want to have a miss right now.
That makes perfect sense. Are there any particular blind spots that we should be keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to really understand the problem. and that most companies focus on internal data because that's what you have, right? You have historical sales, volume, revenue by business unit. You have the cost for major expense items like these commodities or raw materials, both direct and indirect. You also have things that you may be doing if you're like in retail or CPG, like pricing and promotions readily available, how you're going to launch a new product or distribution. But what companies are missing then is the other half of the picture. Well, even if we do all those things well, maybe the consumer is not going to spend. Maybe household income is lower. So the blind spots really come outside their four walls. Consumer signals like consumer sentiment, industry, business cycles, whether they're increasing or decreasing, climate, weather matters in a lot of industries, demographic data, economic trends, and all these very big events, almost black swan like, maybe not quite a pandemic, but tariffs themselves are typically priced or where you can gather that data is outside your four walls. Maybe looking at social sentiment, maybe looking at tweets, or maybe the meeting that's happening between political leaders. Well, you need to understand how that could impact the rest of 2025, which is now very short, and 2026 and beyond. So that's where the blind spots live.
That makes sense as well. Can you give us a little bit of an overview of board signals and foresights?
Yeah, so what we have at board is pretty unique in the market. So the board signals and foresights came from an acquisition that board did of the company I started back in 2012, which was called Private. This company, or the company I built, really focused on helping companies look at external data in an automated, systematic, and repeatable way, and to use that in the planning process through an econometric modeling engine. So as we look at a tool as powerful as board and their EPM platform, well, we have the internal data across functions that we're collecting, supply chain, finance, marketing, HR, really wouldn't matter because the system can consolidate all that data in memory. Board signals brings in the external data in what we call our global intelligence cloud. 5.5 million data series from all over the globe that we bring into specific industries and specific companies where they can literally watch the external factors that matter to them and get alerts to be more proactive and predictive. Now, a step further. Let's not just look at the external data and say consumers are slowing spending and it's a 3-month leading indicator for us. Let's actually build predictive models that are going to help me forecast demand for my products, revenue by business unit or legal entity, or price of those key expense items. That's board foresight. It's an econometric modeling engine that we built over a decade that leveraged the power of AI and ML combined with the signals or this global data. So those are the two offerings that seamlessly integrate into board, also can work with any other platform for you as well. So if you're not quite on the journey of board and there are 2,000 global customers, that you've got a different planning system, well, these tools can work for you too. It just is much easier and more of a complete solution, as I'll show you when you have the board platform as well.
That's great to hear that it's platform agnostic and it can be layered down on top. Well, in reference to the overall planning and everything, you can see basically you've already described that a little bit here, but can you go a little bit deeper in the weeds here in terms of how signals and foresights actually interact with board?
Yeah. So board itself has been around for quite a few years. Really started in Europe. Lots of great customers, lots of experience collecting and consolidating data, and doing this across functions. So what we realized with our partners, there were some best-in-class ways that these functions were analyzing their data in board. So we put together a solutions package around board. Think of it as an accelerator for companies in different functional areas: finance, FP&A, consolidation or global consolidations, that planning process and budgeting, supply chain, and all the activity you have to do, starting with a demand forecast and network and logistics optimizations kind of tasks, we have that data inside a board. HR can use this as well for workforce planning. We have assortment and merchandising and a merchandise planning solution as well, that we can really bring all these functions together so they're all starting with the same plan, the same assumptions, but we want to marry that with board signals, the external factors as well. So they're all also using the same external factors. Here's our metric for GDP. Here's what we believe is going to happen with interest rates and gas price. It's one version of the truth and signals of the factors that they want to share across these functions. And then all day, every day, our customers benefit from board foresight, bringing in econometric models that are updating as the world changes across these functions. We're seeing pressure now and demand for a product in a specific geography for supply chain. Well, now it is the same, a really model that finance can view. And we can really true those up or tie those together so you go from strategic to operational decisions all in one place.
Very cool. Well, and I know you've got, before we jump into the platform, I think this is the last slide before you actually show everybody what board foresights and signals looks like in action. But this gives an overview, correct me if I'm wrong, in reference to the technology behind foresights and signals and everything that you've basically built from the ground up over the last 10 years, correct?
Yeah, it's really been an evolution for us too. And it starts with our data layer. I mentioned that we collect from over 2,000 sources globally: economic data, financial data, consumer behavior, online activity. We have partners that have great household surveys or retail scan data. And we built in our engine predictive forecasts that we know work well across tens of thousands of macro and microeconomic factors. So it starts with that large set of data, the depth and breadth to help all industries, all countries, in 180 different countries, to be precise, to be able to find signals and data that they can use. Now, all that data by itself is just noise unless you can process it and understand, well, what subset of data do I need? That's where AI has been in our platform and evolved too. First, AI will allow us to do things like understand what your industry is, what your geography, and give us those supply and demand factors and actually help us search for them right in the application. So we don't have to look individually at 5.5 million things. We also can use things like machine learning to do statistical analysis in minutes across all 5 million data sets, comparing it to changes in your business, your data. So AI has been there for that, the really large processing of data, the intelligence to know what drives what industries. But predictive AI is the piece where we use AI to build at scale thousands of models and test to find the best model, right? The best fit. So AI helps us do the routine and mundane heavy lifting, something I couldn't do, or a data scientist or one economist couldn't do in decades, right? They're not going to build 2,800 models in 3 or 4 minutes, score and rank them by dozens of statistical tests. We're just not capable as humans. But the other piece, and what I'm most excited about, is generative AI. So generative AI helps us do something that we used to have to train our customers personally to do. That's to explain or interpret the models and the data series that we're looking at. So what we used to have to do was go in and teach FP&A or supply chain how to talk like an economist, how to think like an economist. Well, that's not their day job. So what we've been able to do with generative AI over the last 3 years is use it to think and explain our models like a team of economists would to your business leaders. So at your fingertips, you don't only have the statistics and the rigor around the predictive model and knowing how accurate it is. You can now talk to your business leaders in a manner that they understand. Why do we see pressure? When do we see consumers pulling back on spending? Well, here is when, and here's why. That's built into the application. This is what makes this mainstream and for everybody to use, that generative piece. And when we do that, what we've seen, the real impact is companies get better at planning. It starts with the forecast. So we'll see things like 20 to 40, maybe 50% reduction in forecast error, whether it's a month out, 3, 6, 12, or 18. Everybody benefits when they're more accurate, maybe going from 10% off to 5. Some of our customers go from 3 to 1, but they're multi-billion-dollar companies, right? So that really matters. So that's what's in the technology and why we do it. Happy to show you, kind of walk through an example of what the application does to get to that final forecast. To do that, I'm going to share my screen, Matt.
Yeah, go ahead and control. We can come back to the deck after you're done doing show and tell.
And then we will spotlight it. Okay, I think that's large enough for all of us to see.
Yep.
And what's neat about Board Foresight and Board, and why this really acquisition made a lot of sense to me as the owner and founder, we're building the same technology. We're building Microsoft Azure Cloud Computing. I ran IT for about 14 years in a large Fortune 500 company, saw the need for this software, but I also knew that I really didn't want to go in and rip and replace companies' existing systems. I wanted to be able to just go in with no new hardware, no new software locally to install. I also didn't want to own data centers, and I needed that compute power of cloud computing. So I started on Azure. Board itself is on Azure as well. So like technology. So all you need is a browser to really get started on Board and Board Foresight and Signals. As we look at our webpage here, our application, I'm going to walk through the methodology of a retail customer. Now, this retail customer I know is premium spirits, alcohol sales, which have undergone a significant change in consumer behavior. We see that the market and the industry has really changed from decades of stability and growth to maybe people starting to try other things. And we're trying to figure that out as a company in this example. So as I walk through the application, at the very top is our methodology. We start with data. I mentioned all the large data sets externally. Well, it's also customer data. We can build a connector into any tool. We can drag and drop our sales or our demand or our spend on certain items right into the platform. Then we discover a subset of factors that matters for my products and services. We visualize that in a very interactive, in our first patent, in a workbench, where we can show business leaders what the engine's found. We can add our own indicators if we think there are more needed, and visualize that in a way business leaders get it. They understand it immediately. And then next, the heavy lifting. How do I go from 5.5 million to maybe 30 or 40 key indicators to a predictive model? That's our AI predict engine. And then the model is what we publish. That's the thing that's going to give our forecast and our numbers back to our planning tools like Board or others. So that's our predictive model that we then watch every day. AI doesn't take a day off, doesn't go to sleep, it doesn't leave the company with its proprietary formula. It's going to essentially watch and update every day, 24/7. So I mentioned data. I'm going to start here. Here you can see customer data in our repository. We can open that up, and this could be any indicator from a SKU level to a category to total sales for the company. Wouldn't matter to us. But what we see here is a pattern that repeats itself each year. Alcohol sales spike certain times of the year, like holidays, events, etc., New Year's Eve. And we see that seasonal pattern, but we see this trend over time. We've got lots of data points going back many years, in this case to 2012. You typically need about 5 years worth of data to get a really good model going. Sometimes we can use less, but that's the internal data. Now I want to marry that with everything in Board Foresight's repository. Now, Board Foresight repository contains, as I mentioned, over 5.5 million data sets. You can see that number at the top. They come to actually they're organized by ones that are used most frequently. We have to adjust for COVID in about every model, so you see that at the top. But we also see things like housing starts. Construction is in a slowdown. That tends to be a leader for a lot of our purchases. So that's at the top as well. there's different countries. 1.8 million in the US. Majority of our data is actually outside the US. That's still plenty of data sets for countries like Brazil with 300,000 or China with half a million or I'm sorry, half a million there, 509,000. Now, this data by itself is too much, a lot of noise. So what we did early is we put a classification engine, an AI classification engine that can tell us if I sell alcohol, I can just do hashtag alcohol, and I can find that subset of data that's very specific to the alcohol industry. So here you'll see household surveys at the top. It's a great predictor for us. We'll see spending plan, beer, wine, alcohol in different demographics. Households less than 50K, they behave differently than households above 100. We see things like employment, spending, commodity costs, all these things that matter from a microeconomic standpoint for alcohol. Knowing that I'm going to use some of these, but I also want some macro factors, 1,500 is still too many. I don't want to manually look through and compare it to my sales. That's why we built Discover. What Discover does, it compares our sales mathematically and systematically with all 5.5 million data sets. It runs in minutes. We've improved it over time that you can run many things at once in minutes and get those results in what we call a workbench. This is the aha moment for most of our customers. This is where we visualize that we went from not 5.5 million or 1,580, but actually about 30 or 40 that our engine has found and says, this is a great subset of factors that you should pay attention to across categories. Now, those categories are things like employment data, trade data, wages, pricing, which really matters, financial, production. They are a subset in each category that's comparing in blue on every chart the metric we care about, our sales. That really seasonal thing I showed you in the beginning is here over time. The colored indicators, green, dark green, light green, yellow, orange, just random, are the external factors that our engine has found. And I'm going to show you the methodology I learned many years ago by a chief economist and a head of retail at Goldman Sachs, so a retail analyst and a managing partner, that had a methodology of understanding how to find leading indicators for different industries. Very important. We want to know where industries are going, not where they've been. So what they would do is they said, you can see on this chart, this is very noisy. We can't really tell, looking at it as it happens, what leads what. This aggregate of weekly wages or employment in dark green against this blue sales of our product. So what we can do mathematically is we can adjust for seasonality, smooth out monthly outliers really quickly. And what you'll see is part of their methodology. What it will show are peaks and valleys. So it'll smooth out that noise that we saw in the application and show us peaks and valleys that economists would look at to identify what leads what. So here in dark blue, that's my sales. Light blue is employment in a certain subsector. Doesn't really matter what sector. It's just employment in general, how much money we have as consumers. Now, what you can see is the light green versus the blue. It goes into a downturn many periods ahead of a sustained downturn of this dark blue indicator. Well, in our application, part of the aha moment is we can lead and lag that, and we can watch the statistical fit improve. If we move this employment metric 10 months in advance, we get a much higher statistical fit, the ability to explain change in what I care about. That's an important thing because I can not only do it here, our system already has done that calculation and can do that to find 6-month, 10-month, 12-month leading indicators across all these categories. Wages, trade, prices. I can find a great cross-section of indicators I may want to use to forecast future demand many periods in advance. Now, we used to have to build those models by hand, test different factors, and then look at our statistical rigor and scores. Well, AI builds those for us. It's an automated engine. Think of it as an army of economists and an army of data scientists in a box. We can set our horizon, whether it's near, medium, or long. We can ask it to run to build thousands of models, and then we can publish the most accurate predictive model. Let's look at 2026 forecast. So in this model, the solid line is going to be our historical demand, our actuals. The dashed line is going to be what we forecast going forward for 12 periods. Importantly here, first, we're looking at directional accuracy. Each month, we're predicting up or down the next period. This model is about 92% accurate. Now, a model by itself is just numbers. We also break the model down to show you what are the factors I'm considering in this predictive model. It's seasonality, which only explains about 40% of the change. It's sales and employment in other industries, like our motor vehicles, which are in a real decline. It's export price for other foods. It's employment in general. Retail inventory destocking. All these factors come together to provide my forecast. What's neat about board foresight, we can go back in time and show that if we would have used this model at the beginning of the year, for example, how accurate would it have been, this out of sample test? So here, we're going back in time. We're going to see the blue line is what we forecast. The orange line is what happened. And we can scroll down and quickly see this model using these external factors is off by just plus or minus about 2%. So it is off by just about 2%. So it's a 98% accurate model that we then get comfortable to share with our business leaders when we say we're going to be up or we're going to be down by just 2%. Here's why. And we've got the data behind it. Destocking of inventory, employment is starting to pull down consumer spending on our products. So Matt, I know that was a lot. We went through everything from, discovering what factors matter to building predictive models and then showing our, business users the accuracy that we can bring by adding this external factor.
Yeah, no, that was a great overview, especially in real time for our viewing audience. So in reference to continuing the journey, I hope now you can see how board foresights and signals can offer the attendees a 360-degree planning view in reference to how we mirror the internal data with the external data. Is there any additional information you want to provide, Rich, in reference to that overview?
No, I think the real thing that I noticed in my career is that no matter how much we kind of got in the weeds of our numbers, our business intelligence dashboards, reports, and our systems, the C-suite really need data no matter where it lives, inside or outside your four walls. And they need to move from reactive and historical because they won't look at it. Truthfully, they want predictive and proactive, things that they can make decisions on tomorrow. So for me, it's being able to provide both in the same platform. That's the real win here.
That makes perfect sense, which obviously most people are probably asking, how do we have this conversation with our C-suite in reference to how do we leverage the external data? You may already be leveraging it today, just in different silos and fragments. I'm sure, Rich, you run across different companies all the time that are just taking snippets, but may not offer a holistic view that is as in informational as board foresights and signals, correct?
Yeah, the big thing is it was very ad hoc and manual when we were doing our analysis, or maybe we went to a board meeting, we missed our forecast, we had to go explain it. So it was a lot of firefighting, but the lack of an automated, systematic, and repeatable system to bring in this external and make it consistent across functions is really the big miss. But what's been fun is really, the pandemic certainly drove business our way. Volatility drives business our way. But now, if you see the companies that we do this for, it's leading brands and retailers and companies across the globe. Some of the largest companies in the world. And that's what's exciting to me is this has now become mainstream. These aren't your early adopters, small companies. These are companies that have been around that really know how to forecast and plan internally, may have systems, but realize there was something missing. So it's exciting for me to start seeing these household names across industries, from manufacturing to retail to CPG to logistics, banking, life science, insurance. To really, I think this is something that every company is going to be doing in the future.
No, that makes perfect sense, and it's always fun to see transformation within these various logos across that you guys have in terms of your portfolio. And with that, I want to give you a little bit of overview of Board. So I know we jumped right into Board foresights and signals, which is the topic at hand. But to give you an overview of Board, Board has been around for over 30 years. They are an international company, like Rich called out earlier, and they're built on the Microsoft ecosystem. So everything is hosted in Azure. You've got all the security requirements already built into the platform. You've also got agentic AI capabilities built into the platform, as well as predictive analytics. And then you've also got the external data sets like Board foresights and signals at your fingertips. Quisitive is one of 150 partners that Board currently has. We like to consider ourselves the best partner because, believe it or not, we are Board's Partner of the Year for 2023 and 2024 here in North America. And Quisitive's skin in the game is all we do is Microsoft, hence our partnership with Board. We, in addition to that, do the implementation and consulting for Board, but also as it relates to data, the reason why Board foresights and signals is near and dear to our heart is we were Microsoft's global worldwide partner for analytics. So the Board and Quisitive combo is a great addition to any company to help you guys with throughout the transformation of your data and finance journey. The other thing that we want to call out, and Rich already touched basis on this in reference to the overview, but Board delivers a unified planning platform. And so Board foresights and signals is agnostic and can sit across any EPM platform. But if you don't have an enterprise planning platform today, Board is the answer, so you can have everything all in one. The reason why that's important, as Rich called out, we can help you with your FP&A transformation, but we can also help you with consolidation and reporting if you're just looking for better reporting and unified data across your organization. But we can also help you with your commercial planning, whether it be short-term or long-range planning. And then we can even help you with workforce planning across the organizations. Because as you saw, a lot of the logos that we have, they are large billion-dollar organizations that Rich has as customers and Board has as customers. And workforce planning is top of mind for them. In addition, we can help you with supply chain planning or demand planning from a merchandising standpoint, as Rich called out, and layer on those insights for you. The other value add that I want to call out for Board before we open it up for before we transition into the actual customer success stories for you is twofold. Number one, agentic AI is built into the Board platform, rolling out in FY26 free of charge. There's no incremental cost for you guys. And the first persona that they're rolling out is around the finance persona specifically. In addition, a key differentiator for Board is the fact that it is unlimited data. So it's all you can eat, all you can drink. You don't get nickel and dime for data consumption, which ties nicely into Rich's story about layering on Board foresights and signals, because you can have all that external data consolidated into one platform for you and one source of truth holistically across your organization. Now, with that being said, I want to show you guys the actual customers in terms of real world impact and proven success stories. Rich, do you want to talk about Kraft Heinz when you get a chance?
Yeah, certainly. So Kraft Heinz, great company, undergoing a lot of really change, as most companies do, right? They're privately held, and you see recent announcements as they may even restructure, things like that. Well, that happens because their business changes, like all. We saw with them a big need during the pandemic. North American CFO actually reached out because really had a problem predicting demand. it was kind of through the roof for things like macaroni and cheese. We were all stuck at home. Restaurants were closed, right? It's real convenient for us to go just heat up macaroni and cheese. So we saw something that may be growing 3% a year for many years, maybe decades. All of a sudden, maybe it's 40. So this volatility really impacts almost all decisions. What do we do from a contract standpoint from our suppliers? How much do we make? How much do we ship? Do we have enough pallets to ship it on? All those things matter. The other is we have to predict that sales and that revenue for our board and investors and shareholders. We want to know what's driving our business. How much of this is actual a change, or how much of it is stimulus driven? How much it is restaurant closure driven? So what they did is they got smarter about categories of food across their business, brought in the external factors, had us help quantify that so that they had more accurate forecast that they literally share with hundreds of business leaders globally every month. So this begins their planning process monthly so that they get a good insight of really what's driving their business. How much of it was based on consumer behavior changes, how much stimulus shutdowns, and then when's the rebound? Are we back to 2019 or not? Most likely not. People change their behavior. So it's an ongoing thing for them to help improve their outlook globally as it rolled out to other regions as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then you've got a couple other customers on here in reference to Milwaukee Tools and Whataburger. What can you tell us about them?
Yeah, now we can shift gears to supply chain. So for Milwaukee Tools, a great company that's been growing tremendously. Their products that you'll see in Lowe's and Home Depot, et cetera. During the pandemic, they also saw big demand, but in general, they had really high growth rates they needed to explain. And they needed to know how long that was going to last. They're really outperforming in their market against competitors, et cetera. So supply chain in this case came in and they wanted to model demand for their different types of products. What happened here that we saw is a predictive model actually helped save them millions or make them millions of dollars. They were forecasting different products. One that they thought, their business leaders thought, that demand is going to wane or slow down. Well, they were getting ready to take one of their production lines offline for that and slow down producing that specific product. Our predictive model said, no, it's going to continue. They reviewed it together, decided to keep that line open. Sure enough, sales sustained and it ended up being millions of dollars they wouldn't have had in sales if they would have just did it based on gut feel. So a whole different story. They are more of a supply chain, but for Whataburger, it's finance again. In this case, we've got a team in FP&A that really have to help set targets that then get passed down to all employees that really matter for bonuses, right? So for them, they wanted to set more data-driven targets, what our market's telling us, the consumer, by regions of stores, so that they had a very good econometric baseline forecast for planning around growth for the next year. They built models that would end up going sometimes challenging the target setting that was done from the top. So we have a target set from the board. It says we want to grow maybe double digits. Maybe we see headwinds in certain markets in our models. They were able to take that, come to a more realistic forecast, and literally said that saved our bonuses 1 year, right? So that's what we're all about. It can be very personal. It's big, multiple billions of dollars in Kraft Heinz and Milwaukee Tool that they're really playing with, and millions if they get it right, down to something personal like your bonus. How many times have we missed it, knowing in our hearts that we probably weren't going to be able to hit it all year long? Well, here's some data that can help us, which leads us to Rocky Brands.
That's very interesting because Rocky Brands, obviously, we share together in terms of with Quisitive and Board and the holistic view, and again expanding upon the supply chain footprint. They obviously came to us to help solve for the topic at hand, which was tariffs and coming out of their manufacturing facilities and things of that nature, and their imports into the U.S. And the business use case specifically that they wanted help solving was with demand planning, right? And how to get better insights and predictive insights in terms of the tariffs and consumer spending and how that affects their business on a global scale. And obviously all tying back to inventory, right? How do I reduce my inventory, increase my turns, things of that nature? What is the tariffs doing to my cost? Lots of wild cards out there. Was there anything specific with the Rocky Brands transformation that you want to call out, Rich?
I think one, these stories are on our website, our public website, also even videos of the champions within these first three, and then Rocky Brands has been a great customer here in Ohio with me. And really, a neat thing about them is, like all, they're trying to reduce that safety stock, right? If they can go from, let's say, multiple weeks or cut it by multiple weeks, that means a lot to them, right? So they're a great retailer that wants to make sure that they're not carrying too much inventory because it ties up a lot of working capital that maybe they could use to invest in new products, new markets, right? R&D, any of those things that really you've got tied up in inventory. So I think it's a neat story. They're going to keep telling that story with us. So we look forward to that. They've been a great customer and literally just down the road from me.
Well, thank you everybody for joining Rich and I today. On the screen, the next slide is a QR code in terms of how you can connect with us. If you have any follow-up questions and you're just too shy to ask, happy to follow up and answer those for you one-on-one. Or more importantly, if you just want to figure out how to start the transformation and want to do a deeper dive in terms of a demo with board or board foresights and signals, Rich and I are also happy to help you assist with that. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt.